Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for Renaissance Periodization, and this is video number 1 of a 7-video series about the training principles. You may have seen other stuff like this from me before, and this is sort of the newest edition. I'm going to try to keep it simple, effective, straight to the point, so you can understand these concepts to be able to train yourself better and to train clients and customers and athletes better. Here we go. Specificity training principle number 1, and it is the most important. The formal definition of specificity looks something like this. Training that seeks to improve a given ability must do one of two things, at least. Either it has to directly train that ability, like if you want to be able to bench press, bench pressing training, actually benching and training is a smart idea, or train the subsystems that promote that ability and underlie that ability. So if you want your bench press to go up, training the chest or the shoulders or the triceps makes some sense and is still specific to the goal of getting the bench to go up. So it's either 1, you train the thing you want to improve, or 2, you train the subsystems that make the thing you want to improve. That's specificity. Training that checks those boxes is specific to your goals. That's the more technical, formal definition. The kind of more real-world definition is how you explain it to yourself, potentially, definitely how you can explain it to your clients, is if you want something to improve, either train that something or train the stuff that makes you better at that something. And you don't want to stray too far away from this idea if effective training is your number one concern, and of course it is. There is a sub-principle that is worthy of note here. The sub-principle of specificity, there's only one, and it's called directed adaptation. And it is the idea that if you train for one thing and then train for other stuff and then come back and train for that other thing again and then train some other stuff and then come back and train for that other thing a third time, the signal to make you better at that one thing gets diluted, it gets lost, and your progress isn't as good as if you relatively frequently, in a roughly sequential manner, continue to represent a same or similar stimulus, all with that one message. The analogy here is one of language learning, which I've used in the past, and it's a very good analogy, if I may say so myself, because it is actually not so much an analogy, but a homology in the sense that it's a system that works similarly because it's still in the brain, still neuroscience, and much of the way that you improve in physical pursuits is also neurologically driven. And here's the thing with language. If you want to get really good at learning German, what you want to do is probably learn some German. Relax, do other activities. The next day or 2 days later, German again. A couple days later, German again. German, German, German for 4 weeks or 8 weeks or 12 weeks. Because of that constant representation of the same or similar stimulus, one ability builds on top of the next. And that leads to a really good rate of gain in your ability to, at the end of that, speak better German or read better German or write better German. On the other hand, if you do a bit of German here, a bit of French, a bit of German, a bit of French, there's some cross-education, some wire crossing, some interference effects, and it's just not clear to your brain what the hell it is supposed to be learning. Some of the stuff you think is German might actually be French words. Some of the conjugation you think is German might actually be French. It screws up the whole process. In physical training, that means if we pick a task that we want to get better at, or a muscle group we want to improve, every week, twice a week, whatever it is, you can do other stuff, continually represent similar, 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 which is a great application. Here's an example of it. If you want to increase the size of your quadriceps muscles and you've picked the high bar squat and the leg press as your core quad builders in 1 week, put them again in the next week, and again in the next week, and again in the next week. An entire mesocycle of training should be composed of roughly similar exercises, if not the exact same ones, week to week to week to week. That directed adaptation that forces grows your quads in the exact way that the high bar squat and the leg press grow them, and it summates, and you get bigger quads at the end. This has been directly tested in the literature. Choosing different exercises every week leads to worse gains, still good gains, but worse gains than continually representing the same exercises over and over. Yes, you still do more load. Yes, there are other muscle groups you can train in that week, but when the task comes to hitting what you need to hit, you need to do similar, 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 similar. How to use specificity. A couple of points here. I have 4 things to tell you about this. First, never lose track of the goal. For example, if you want to increase strength in the squat and you ask yourself, should I do this exercise? Should I do this training method? Should I do this other technique or this or that? You can always come back and ask yourself the question, how does this increase my squat? If it is directly increasing your squat through training the squat heavy, check. If it is training the subsystems that in a clear way increase your squat, check. If it's anything else, you've lost track of your goal. It's very easy to start training for something, end up training getting all wishy-washy, and you're like, I don't even know what we're doing here. If you guys have ever watched some of my videos in which I critique Hollywood training, it's terrible for celebrities. A lot of times the goal is make the celebrity look more like a superhero. And the training is a giant question mark as to how the hell that adds up to anything. Specificity is the ultimate hemming in of desires to go, okay, this is where you want to go. This is how you go. Point number 2, if you're training something for a specific goal and you're not training the goal or a subsystem of that goal, you had better have a damn good reason why you're doing that training. And to be honest, if the justification of why you're training it is too complex, if you can't explain it to grandma, you're probably overcomplicating to the detriment of the actual process. This is how we get fluff in programs. Why are you leg pressing? You said you wanted to have a big squat. Yeah. The leg press increases my muscle size more efficiently than the squat does with a bigger stimulus to fatigue ratio. And then once I have bigger muscles in my legs, I use them, I train them in the squat, and then I get the best squat gains. Hey, you got me. I'm convinced. What if you were like, hey, I'm doing 1 leg Bosu ball prehab exercise. Okay, you said you wanted a big squat. How does this help? The instability of a squat, you get more stable off of 1 leg. Okay, is stability a limiting factor in the squat when you're actually practicing the squat for several weeks? Yes? No. The answer is no. Okay. Did you know that the answer was no? No. To be honest, I kind of just want to do weird Bosu ball stuff and I could put it in there and I'm trying to justify it. Don't do that. Keep things as simple as you can. Either they train the subsystem with something obvious, like they make it bigger or they make it stronger, or they train the technique better, or it trains the direct thing itself, or it's not in the menu. And this is why true programs that you will write, either for strength and conditioning for athletes or for people trying to improve the physique, anyone in between, are going to look pretty goddamn basic to the untrained eye. Even to the trained eye, they look very basic. But basic is the thing that drives specificity. You cannot have something be very fancy because almost always it runs away from specificity. Now, point number 3 is important as a rejoiner. Variation is still a thing. Variation is the opposite of the principle of specificity. Variation tells us that if we do the same stuff too often and it's too similar, it gets stale on us, which is totally a thing. But variation has to exist under the big tent of specificity. For example, the big tent of specificity for improving my squat has a bunch of stuff under it. One of the things is it has the section in the big tent circus called increasing leg size. It has another section called increasing leg strength. In the increasing leg size section, there's tons of variation. There's the hack squat area. There's the leg press area. There's the high bar squat, super strict and deep area. There's a bunch of different areas. That's variation. You can do leg presses for 2 months, hack squats for 2 months, high bar squats for 2 months. That's dope. But it's all under the big tent of gets you bigger so that you can get a bigger squat. If you have 1-legged Bosu ball squats, that's not under any tent. That's in the fucking shitter outside. It's in the porta potty 300 feet away from the big circus tent of specificity. That's outside of our realm. So variation is important, but just like if you are on a highway that has 4 lanes, you don't have to go in the left lane or the right lane. You can switch lanes, variation, but all the lanes are going in the same general direction. That's the key thing to remember. And there's not just variation. So point number 4 is that good training checks the other principles off as well. If you have excessive specificity at the expense of overload, that's a problem. You'll see that in sport training a lot. People will say, well, I'm going to teach someone how to tackle somebody, so I'm going to put a band around their waist and they're going to run and pretend to tackle with a band. So, okay, that looks very specific to tackling, except the force dynamics are all wrong because band stretches further and it actually is harder, but the more momentum you pick up in a run in football, actually the more force you have. So it's a little backwards, but okay, no worries. It's very specific to tackling, but what are we in the gym to do? We're not in the gym to learn how to tackle. That's actually what you do in the football field with the sport coach. And I go, okay. We're trying to get our legs stronger. I got you. How much stronger do your legs get tackling against a band versus lifting heavy ass weight? Nobody debates this anymore in strength and conditioning. The answer is heavy ass weight makes your legs way fucking stronger. So what you've done is by overly focusing on specificity, you've crapped on overload, and that's not good. So good specificity means that it checks all of the other 6 training principles as well and is specific. Give that some thought. Hopefully some of your thoughts make sense. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time for the next principle.